Now, we're going to start off with a story that we mentioned in the news, the detention of a French police officer being investigated for his actions during recent riots. It's prompted several police officers to walk off the job in protest, and it's the focus of the French papers. Dipty's here to take us through it, Dipty.
Well, that's right. Frédéric Vaux, he's France's national police chief, told Le Parisien on the weekend that police officers pending investigation shouldn't be detained or jailed like ordinary citizens, even in the case when they have committed serious faults or serious errors. His comments were backed up then by Paris's police prefect, but it has been met with swift backlash from French opposition MPs and also magistrates, as Le Parisien aujourd'hui en France, the French paper today, notes on its front page. Those comments really drawing a lot of backlash from magistrates. Libération is also focusing on this on its front page today. It asks, are police officers indeed above the law, or should they be above the law? The paper's editor also evoking a sort of paralysis from the government's reaction, notably Emmanuel Macron's comments about the police officer's detention. He was sort of drawn into this debate. The paper feels that his comments were too vague, too ambiguous, and not really taking a side either way.
What else are the papers talking about? They're talking about, of course, those ongoing fires ravaging the Greek island of Rhodes.
Yeah, Katamarini, that's a Greek paper choosing to headline on this today. Like many of the Greek papers, it's going with this picture here, that of exhausted firefighters on the island of Rhodes who are fighting those very, very ferocious flames. Nearly 19,000 mostly tourists have also been evacuated out of the path of fire. That's what the paper says. Many of those tourists are British holidaymakers, and the British dailies are also focusing on this, but notably focusing on what many have called a chaotic and frantic evacuation of holidaymakers from the island. You have this on the Daily Mirror. We ran for our lives, the paper recounting some of those experiences from British tourists, while the Eye is pointing the finger at irresponsible airlines who continue to fly tourists into the wildfire zone, and hotels for continuing to take reservations, despite the fact that people on the island are still struggling to leave, and that many are still unaccounted for. From Greece then to Algeria, Stuart, because of course the north of Algeria is also experiencing terrible fires right now. This is from El Watan. It's an Algerian paper, which says a heat wave has sparked those fires. 97 different fires are raging through the north of Algeria right now.
Some football or soccer, depending how you like to see it. Kylian Mbappé being sidelined by his club Paris Saint-Germain. It sparked the interest of other clubs now, a source of speculation, perhaps not surprisingly, in the sports pages.
Yeah, he's always a source of speculation, it must be said. He's on the front of L'Équipe today, the French paper, which says that Paris Saint-Germain has accepted to consider an offer by the Saudi Arabian club Al Hilal for over 300 million euros for Kylian Mbappé. All bets are on. That's what L'Équipe says. Now, Kylian Mbappé himself is staying mum on where he wants to go next or what his future is. This writer for NBC Sports says, though, that the eye-watering sums that Saudi's public investment fund is pouring into football, but also golf and possibly tennis, should send alarm bells, notably to the ultra-lucrative American football NFL league as well. And what it should do, if, I quote, and what it should do, I quote, if and when the PIF decides to make inroads there as well.
For the future to the past now. 45 years ago today, the first test tube baby was born.
Yeah, that's right. Well, let's take you through a deep dive into the archives today. It was an incredible feat in advancing reproductive technology. On July the 25th, 1978, Louise Joy Brown was born via IVF in Britain. She was the first test tube baby ever born. The Daily Mail at the time headlined her as the lovely Louise, as it introduced her to the world on its front page. The Evening News had this front page calling her a super babe. That super babe's birth followed 12 years of research and brought worldwide recognition, not just for the two scientists, but also the embryologist who created Louise, essentially in a petri dish 9 months before. while you had the Daily Express, which called her, was simply titled with "It's a girl born safe, the world's first test tube baby," and also saying that, of course, mother and daughter were doing quite well. Across the pond, it also garnered a lot of attention. This was from the New York Daily News, which said that her birth gave hope to 15,000 people at the time. No doubt millions of babies have since been born through the same procedure. And finally, you had Time magazine, which headlined on her birth as the test tube baby, the magazine noting that hordes of reporters from the US to Japan had descended upon the small southwestern English town of Oldham to bear witness to what Time magazine called perhaps the most awaited birth in nearly 2,000 years.
Very nice. Nice to look back through the archives. Finally, from Dipty then, Queen's guitarist Brian May is co-authoring a new asteroid atlas. Yeah,
Brian May and Dante Loretta Stewart, a planetary scientist, are co-authoring a new 3D atlas of the near-Earth asteroid Bennu, which is an 85 million-ton hunk of rock orbiting the sun. That's according to the website Gizmodo. Brian May actually left his studies as an astrophysicist to form Queen, the rock band. He eventually earned his PhD in interplanetary dust in 2006 and credited one of Queen's South American tours because that's where he had collected some of the data for his PhD. So Brian May, world-famous rock star, astrophysicist, soon-to-be author, and in case you're still feeling inadequate about yourself this morning, he was also recently knighted, so he literally is a rock musician now, Stuart.
Exactly, he certainly is, isn't he? Thank you very much. Very, very corny, nice and corny from Dipty. That's the latest from us here on Forest 24. More news coming up very shortly. Thanks.